Let me tell you a true story. A man stands at the edge of a river. It's cold. It's early. Nobody is watching him. In his hands is a sword. It took months to make. Someone dug the ore. Someone carried it. Someone stood over a fire long enough to ruin their lungs, and hammered, and cooled it, and hammered it again. In his world, this single object is worth more than most people will own in their entire lives. He looks at it for a long time. Then he puts it across his knee, and he bends it. Not a little. He folds it until the blade is ruined, until no hand will ever hold it again, and he throws it into the water. He does not come back for it. Nobody does. You've done a smaller version of this. You stood over a fountain with a coin in your hand. You didn't need to throw it. You knew somewhere behind your eyes that the coin wasn't going anywhere and nothing was listening. You threw it anyway. Something in you wanted to pay for something you couldn't name. That instinct is old, much older than the fountain, much older than the coin. Here's what makes this story strange. That man wasn't alone. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't mad. He wasn't making a gesture nobody else understood. He was doing something his grandfather did, and his grandfather's grandfather. Across ancient Europe, humans threw their most valuable possessions into rivers, lakes, and bogs. And they did it for something like 1,000 years. Not everywhere. That's the part that gets you. It was specific places. The same bend in the same river, chosen and returned to across dozens of generations. The River Thames and the River Witham in Britain. A small lake called Llyn Carreg in Wales. Bogs across Denmark and northern Germany. A shallow stretch of Lake Neuchâtel in Switzerland that gave its name to an entire era of art. Archaeologists have pulled thousands of objects out of these places. Swords, shields, helmets, cauldrons, ornaments made by people at the absolute limit of what their hands could do. You don't lose 1,000 swords in the same river by accident. And then there's the detail that changes everything. A huge number of these objects were destroyed before they went into the water. Swords bent double, spearheads snapped, shields punched through, not battle damage. You can tell the difference. This was done deliberately, carefully, by someone who knew exactly how much work they were undoing. Think about what that means. It wasn't enough to give the object away. It had to be made useless. It had to be put somewhere it could never be recovered, in a state where recovery wouldn't have mattered anyway. They weren't storing it. They were making sure it was gone. We don't have their explanation. Nobody wrote it down. Everything past this point is people like us, standing in the present, guessing carefully. But here's what we do know about wealth in their world. There was no bank. There was no vault. There was nowhere to put a fortune where it would simply sit and wait for you. And there was almost nothing to buy. No shops. Your wealth was cattle, grain, metal, land, and none of it could be turned into comfort. It could only be turned into people. You fed them and they owed you. You gave and they followed you, which means wealth in the ancient world was never really a possession. It was a relationship, and relationships have to be maintained. So when a man walks to a river and destroys the most valuable thing he owns, some researchers suggest he isn't wasting it. He's spending it on something that can't be seen and can't be argued with and might be listening. There's another reading, and it's colder. Wealth like that made you visible. It made you a target. Destroying it in front of your people was proof. Proof you were rich enough to lose it, and that nobody could ever take it from you because it was already gone. And there's a third possibility, quieter than both. That water was a boundary, that every culture doing this shared a sense that the surface of a river is where our world stops and something else begins. You put something in there, it doesn't come back. That might be the entire point. In 1943, workers were building an airfield in Wales, cutting into peat near a small lake. They pulled up a mass of ancient ironwork, among it, heavy chains. And the chains were still so strong that the workers used them to haul trucks out of the mud. 2,000 years underwater, and the ironwork still did its job. Somebody made those chains to be lost. Somebody stood at the edge of that lake and let go of them on purpose and expected the world to swallow them and to never think about it again. Instead, it waited 2,000 years and handed them to a stranger who needed help with a truck. We think of wealth as a thing you accumulate, something that goes up, something you protect and grow and are ruined by losing. They didn't. For 1,000 years, in the places that mattered most to them, humans took the best things they had ever made and pushed them out of reach of everyone, including themselves. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they were proud. Maybe they understood something about holding on that we've spent 3,000 years forgetting. But there is one thing I keep coming back to. Not one of them ever went back to check. They gave it up, and they left, and they lived the rest of their lives knowing exactly where it was. Ask yourself what you'd be willing to throw into the water, knowing you could always find it again, and knowing you never would. That's the part of them that's still in you,